While the rest of the sporting world took a break, Ferrari spent 5 weeks turning the SF26 into a different car. 6 parts, 3 test runs across 3 different tracks, and a build plan that the team has kept quiet about until now. What Ferrari is bringing to Miami is not a normal upgrade. It is the moment an entire team finds out whether giving up their 2025 season, burning extra wind tunnel hours, and betting on tech their rivals cannot copy was worth it. That was 5 weeks ago. By the time the freight boxes land in Miami on the 1st of May, the SF26 will carry 6 different changes touching every weak spot Ferrari has found. Inside Maranello, the internal name for the Miami drop is a package and a half. When a team that normally plays things down starts using words like that, every other garage on pit lane should be paying attention. So, here is exactly what Ferrari is bringing part by part. The main piece is a fully new floor. This is the single biggest Aero part on any 2026 car, and Ferrari has rebuilt it from scratch. The Aero group under Diego Tandy has been working on this version since late January, running it through hundreds of wind tunnel tests at the factory in Maranello. The new floor targets 3 things at once: more total downforce, smoother airflow under the car, and better grip through fast corners where the current setup has been losing key tenths. The first 2 races showed a clear weak spot. When the car rolls through medium and high speed direction changes, the airflow under the floor gets messy, and the rear end loses grip without warning. For a driver, that means the car feels planted through one corner, and then suddenly loose through the next with no heads up. That costs more than raw lap time. It costs driver trust. And driver trust is worth tenths on its own. This flaw was first set to arrive at the Bahrain Grand Prix. When that race was called off due to the conflict in the Middle East, the extra time let Ferrari sharpen the design further before locking it in. Ferrari tested it during a 200 km filming day at Monza on the 22nd of April. The choice of track was no accident. Monza's long straights and fast chicanes create the exact forces that show up floor problems. If the new version works there, it works everywhere. Beyond the Monza filming day, Ferrari ran a Mugello test in early April with test drivers Arthur Leclerc and Antonio Giovinazzi for setup work, plus a separate wet weather run at Fano. 3 test venues, 3 different data sets, all feeding into the final version that ships to Miami. Ferrari first asked to go beyond the 200 km limit at Monza, wanting more track time to check the full package. Rival teams blocked that request. The fact that Ferrari even asked tells you something about the belief level inside Maranello. Now the floor alone would count as a big upgrade for most teams, but Ferrari is stacking 5 more parts on top of it. And the second one is the change that has sparked the most tech talk of the entire 2026 season so far. The Macarena rear wing version 2. Ferrari's rotating rear wing is unlike anything else on the grid. Where every other team's active Aero system simply opens flaps to cut drag on straights, the Macarena's second and third flap pieces rotate roughly 270 degrees. They basically flip upside down, creating a stall effect that sharply cuts drag in a way normal systems cannot match. The version 1 test piece showed up during Chinese Grand Prix practice, and right away revealed 2 problems. The timing between the front and rear flap movement was off, and the rear of the car lost grip under combined braking and steering inputs. The version 2 fixes both issues with a lighter build and a cleaner Aero shape that smooths the switch between high downforce and low drag modes. I mean, think about that for a second. Every other team on the grid is working with hinged flaps. Ferrari built a wing that turns itself inside out. And the reason nobody else can copy it comes down to a part most fans have never heard of. Ferrari's exhaust flow turning plate. A flat piece mounted behind the exhaust outlet steers hot gases to feed both the rear wing underside and the diffuser airflow. It stretches the diffuser's reach without adding physical length. The key detail is in the layout. This plate is tied directly to where the differential sits inside the Ferrari gearbox casing. Any team wanting to copy it would need to fully redesign their gearbox and drivetrain. That is not a change you make mid-season. That is a core design choice, and Ferrari locked it in before a single 2026 car hit the track. A final call on whether the Macarena version 2 races at Miami or waits until Montreal will come after the Monza filming day results are studied. The sprint format at Miami, which squeezes the weekend into a single practice session, adds real risk to running an unproven active Aero system. If the data from Monza is clean, it races. If there are any leftover timing concerns, Ferrari will hold it. The third upgrade targets what has been Ferrari's most obvious weak spot through 3 races: battery energy management, or more simply, the lack of it. The problem was impossible to miss at the Japanese Grand Prix. Hamilton started 3rd and finished 6th, losing spots through every stint because the SF26 ran out of electric power before the end of long straights. The problem is called super clipping. The battery drains faster than the charging systems can fill it back up, leaving the car without its electric boost right when it needs it most. At Suzuka, Hamilton was flat out saving energy exactly where his engineers told him to save it, and still losing clear time on every straight to cars with better power software. The new software brings reworked rules for battery management, better energy charging plans, and smarter power release timing. This is not a hardware change. The physical battery and motor units stay the same. What changes is how hard the software pushes those parts to work, and when it chooses to charge versus release across a lap. Ferrari puts the Mercedes power unit edge at roughly 20 brake horsepower. On a track like Miami, with its long straights and heavy speed zones that turn straight into lost spots that cannot be won back. The software upgrade will not close the full gap, but it shrinks the window to the point where Ferrari's corner speed can make up for what they give away on the straights. Now, Ferrari could have stopped there. They did not. Not even close. The last 3 parts round out the package into what makes the team feel right, calling it a package and a half. Halo-mounted fins that briefly showed up during Chinese Grand Prix practice will return in a fully legal version. The first ones were pulled after FIA checkers flagged a material issue. The fins must be made from the same material as the halo itself. A rule Ferrari missed in the rush to get them on the car for China. The fixed version meets the rules, while keeping the intended Aero gain. These fins are not for show. They guide airflow over the top of the cockpit area and feed cleaner air to the engine intake and rear wing. Weight-saving parts are spread across the car. The SF26, like most 2026 cars, sits above the 768 kg minimum weight limit. The new rules made heavier cars with bigger batteries and more complex active aero systems. And every team has been fighting to strip out needless mass wherever they can find it. Every kilogram removed gives roughly 0.03 of a second per lap on a typical track. Over a 57-lap race at Miami, 0.03 per lap adds up to nearly 2 seconds of total race time. And cooling parts deal with the brutal heat in Miami. Florida in May pushes power unit and battery heat levels to the edge of their safe windows. The 2026 power units make far more heat than their older versions. Partly because the electric systems are working harder under the new rules, and partly because the bigger battery needs more forceful cooling during charging cycles. Ferrari has built custom cooling fixes to make sure speed does not fade in the humid heat. 6 parts, 1 weekend, and every single one designed to work as pieces of the same joined-up system. None of this exists without a choice that was made 18 months ago. And grasping that choice is the key to grasping why Miami matters more than any single race result. In April of 2025, with the SF25 falling further behind McLaren every weekend, Vaser pulled the plug on the current car. Not cut back on work, not shifted goals, a full stop. Every wind tunnel hour, every computer airflow test, every engineering hand was pointed at the 2026 project. Ferrari gave up an entire season on purpose. They finished 2025 without a single win, dropped to 4th in the team standings, and watched their rivals celebrate while the factory worked in silence on a car nobody outside the team had seen. That gamble gave Ferrari roughly 6 extra months of build time over teams that fought for the 2025 title until the final rounds. And because they finished 4th, they earned extra wind tunnel and testing time throughout 2026, meaning more runs and more data than Mercedes, McLaren or Red Bull. The SF26 was always meant to show up incomplete and get faster on the move. The full build system put in place by tech boss Loic Sera, the former Mercedes engineer who joined Maranello's top team in 2025, was shaped around a single idea. Not to have a fast car at launch, but to have one that gets better throughout the entire season. Miami is the first test of whether that thinking works in the real world. If you have been watching this channel, you already know we go deeper than the headlines on every story like this. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss what comes next in the build war, because this title fight is about to change shape. While Ferrari was pulling its upgrade package together during the 5V break, the rest of the grid was not sitting still. And knowing what every other team is bringing to Miami is needed context for judging whether Ferrari's gamble actually closes the gap, or just keeps pace with a moving target. Mercedes comes into Miami as the top dog, 3 races, 3 wins, 135 team points. George Russell and Kimi Antonelli have landed the kind of steady 1-2 finish pattern that Ferrari badly needs from Hamilton and Leclerc. Even inside the Mercedes camp, there is a sense that the fight is about to shift. Mercedes is not expected to bring big changes to their own car for Miami. Their plan has been different from the start. Rather than mapping out a huge mid-season rework, Mercedes built a car that was fast right away and focused on pulling speed from setup tweaks and learning, rather than physical changes. That plan has worked great through 3 rounds, but it also means Mercedes has less room for growth built into the design. When everyone else upgrades, and they do not, the gap closes on its own, and Mercedes is facing a rule shift that could shrink their edge without Ferrari needing to find a single extra tenth. A compression ratio loophole that Mercedes-powered teams have been using since the start of the season will be closed after the Canadian Grand Prix in June. The FIA will begin running checks at 130°C, targeting compression ratios above 16:1. At lower times, the metal parts expand in ways that hide the true ratio. At 130°, the readings show the real numbers. The likely cost to Mercedes is roughly 0.3 of a second per lap. The compression ratio change alone is not likely to be a huge factor, but paired with Ferrari's own upgrades, even a small cut in Mercedes's straight-line edge shifts the math in a real way. The bigger rule card in Ferrari's hand is the additional development and upgrade opportunities path. Under the 2026 tech rules, any engine maker whose combustion engine falls between 2 and 4% below the top mark earns an extra approved upgrade and more spending room. Ferrari's guessed 20 brake horsepower gap to Mercedes puts them within this range, and the team is fairly sure they meet the bar. The Formula One Commission met on the 9th of April to decide whether the review deadline stays lined up with the Miami round or moves to Monaco. Ferrari wants the earlier deadline because it speeds up the approval clock. Even if cleared, a real engine change would not show up until roughly the Hungarian Grand Prix. That means Ferrari would be racing with the software fix from Miami through 4 more rounds before the true engine upgrade lands. The Miami software change serves as the key bridge across that gap. In 3 months, Ferrari will know for sure whether that path gave them the engine speed they need. That rule tool could be the single most important factor in the second half of the season. McLaren showed real life at Suzuka, where Oscar Piastri finished 2nd and Lando Norris 5th. The team is bringing big upgrades to Miami, targeting floor grip, drag cuts, and a wider setup range for the car across different track types. McLaren had always planned Miami as their first major upgrade point, no matter what happened with the Middle East races. Their first 3 rounds were marked by a car that was fast on some tracks and lost on others, and the Miami package is built to fix that up and down problem. If McLaren's upgrades work, the title fight grows from a 2-team battle into a 3-team war overnight. Red Bull is the team under the most heat. Max Verstappen finished 8th at Suzuka. The RB22 has deep handling problems that small fixes cannot solve. They brought new side pod inlets, a new engine cover, and a new floor to Japan with little gain. The car lacks rear grip under braking and struggles to build front-end bite through slow corners. A mix that leaves Verstappen fighting the car rather than racing the field. Red Bull Ford's engine gap also puts them in line for the upgrade path, but the body problems go deeper than the engine. The team that ruled 2023 and 2024 sits 5th in the team standings with just 17 points through 3 rounds. That is not a dip, that is a crash. And the question hanging over Milton Keynes is whether the shakeup of the tech team after Adrian Newey left took away the design skill needed to bounce back within a single season. More than one team boss has used the same phrase on their own. A new title fight begins in Miami. When that many people at that level say the same thing without planning it, it is not hype. It is a shared reading of where things stand. The driver picture inside Ferrari adds one more moving piece to an already packed weekend. Hamilton will have a new race engineer at Miami. Cedric Michel Grosjean takes over from Riccardo Adami, who was moved to a different role after the first 3 rounds. At 41 years old, in his first full season at Ferrari, Hamilton is getting used to a car that rewards a different driving style than the Mercedes he drove for over 10 years. The engineer swap is meant to give him a voice on the pit wall that talks in a rhythm better suited to how he takes in data during a race. The anger over the power gap has been clear, but so has the belief that his own speed is at its peak. After China, The word from Hamilton's side of the garage was plain. He is back to his best, both in mind and body, and there is more to pull from the SF26. Charles Leclerc has been the steadier of the two, scoring 3 straight podiums through Australia, China, and Japan. The Mercedes power unit edge is openly known within Ferrari. But the view from Leclerc's side of the garage is that there are huge gains still out there in body work, aero, and tyre handling that have nothing to do with the engine. Leclerc has been especially strong over one lap, pulling out raw speed that hence the SF26 has paced the race runs have not yet shown. That gap between one lap speed and race pace is exactly what the energy software upgrade is built to fix. If Ferrari can hold spots on the straights instead of losing them, Leclerc's one-lap speed turns into race-winning speed. The clock is already ticking. Ferrari just does not know yet whether it is counting down to a turning point or to proof that 45 points is too deep a hole to dig out of. The message from inside Ferrari has been the same for weeks. From Miami onwards, a new title fight begins. The season will be very long and the pace of progress just as fierce. So the current gap cannot be allowed to set the course. The push is not being split between body and engine. It is happening everywhere at once. On energy, on body, on aero. That thinking matches exactly what the upgrade package brings. Not a targeted fix in one area, but a full push across every part of the car. And there is one more detail that carries weight given the context. In the first 3 races, Ferrari held back spending on purpose due to budget cap limits. From Miami onwards, those limits ease and the full build rate kicks in. That means the SF26 that raced in Australia, China, and Japan was a held-back version of itself. The car that shows up in Miami is the first full-power version. If the floor brings the downforce gains the wind tunnel showed, if the Macarena version 2 fixes the grip problems that grounded version 1, if the energy software shrinks the power gap to Mercedes, then the 45-point hole starts to look like a short-term problem rather than a lasting one. And if even one of those parts falls short, the questions about Ferrari's 2025 gamble will get lighter, not quieter. What lasts from this moment, no matter what happens in Miami? Is the build system Sarah put in place and the Boltec Ferrari locked in before the season began? The steel cylinder heads that allow burning pressures never before reached in Formula 1. The smaller turbo that trades peak power for the fast starts that have been one of their few steady strong points. The exhaust flow plate that no rival can copy without tearing apart their entire gearbox. Those choices are locked in. They are either the base of a title challenge or the most costly test run in recent Formula 1 history. The next 3 weeks will tell us which one it is.